Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. It is April 10th, I believe. James Herrick, joined by Anthony Miranda for the Daily Show. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm good. A little phone problems with the alarm, but I'm good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. And it's early morning for you. It's because you're on the West Coast, so
Yeah.
you're up bright and early for the Daily Show today. Um, and big week obviously this weekend for UFC 288 287. So that's what we'll start with. Maybe we get into some NBA talk afterwards. We'll see how long it takes us. Playing games are tomorrow, so I'm sure Hannah Fan and Beg Donuts will run through those tomorrow morning too. So we'll get some coverage of that before those go out. But today, starting with UFC 287. Main event, obviously a massive one. Israel Adesanya knocks out Alex Pereira. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it was definitely a entertaining fight for the 2 rounds it went for.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I mean it's Izzy, and I feel like Pereira's a big, or Pereira's big like UFC guy now. So even I saw like a lot of like the more casual fans, like our friends were posting about it and stuff. And so I mean it was just a super, and it's like the main event you want to see from a UFC card. And then it was good to see Izzy finally. Well, it's 3-0, but technically it's 2-2. It should be a little bit because there was like a
Yeah.
bad decision in there.
Mm-hmm.
But at least for UFC, he got his belt back in a amazing way with a flashy knockout. So now now it's 1-1. But I mean, I enjoyed the fight, and I was rooting for Izzy to get it done.
Yeah, it was a really good fight, I thought too, because the first round, Pereira didn't really throw much other
Hmm.
aside from the leg kicks, but you could tell the leg kicks were starting to add up. Second round, he started putting on the pressure a little bit more. The fight got it real exciting there in that second round before Izzy landed that knockout shot, and that was a great shot too. I was impressed with the way he sat down on that because it's like you've got Alex Pereira sitting throwing combos right in your face. Sitting down
Hmm.
on that overhand is probably not the easiest thing to go out there and do when you got someone with Pereira's power standing across from you.
Especially since I mean, give or take, he was stunned before that, but you just got knocked out in the last fight,
Yep.
standing up against the fence too. So.
hmm And to your point about it being like a big event, like I had people that I know that don't watch UFC, like they were talking about it. I had a lot of people that I know that were interested that don't really watch MMA. After the
Hmm.
fight, absolutely massive because he gets the knockout, then he gets the celebration where he's
That
doing
was
the
so
arrows.
cold.
That's
Hmm.
cool, dude. It's crazy. Um, that went big. That did rounds on social media. I looked yesterday and they posted a picture of him doing the arrows, and that had
Uh-huh.
like, I think it had 2.4 million likes on a picture on Instagram when I looked last night. It's
Wow.
like, that's
And
big
that's
numbers.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that Izzy kind of got back some of like when he was first like became the champ when he had the fight with Gaslam, then he had the first fight with Whitaker where he knocks him out, then he takes
Uh-huh.
out Paulo Costa. It's like he was a big time star, and that kind of faded away a little bit because he lost to Jan. Had some fights that he won that weren't really like great fights.
Uh-huh.
Then he loses again to Pereira. It's like so I thought his star power was kind of like going down. At I mean after that knockout, I think it might be at the highest it's ever been.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with you. I think you might be right. It's interesting too, because like, and I mean, they've said it. It is such like a interesting and entertaining story of like them, of just those two people. And it's so fun too, because not only because there's beef, people that have beef or like specific histories with each other, but like two athletes that are that good and are that fun
hmm
every time they share the octagon, or and the ring for that matter too. But like I don't know, it's just pretty. It's good to be a UFC fan with those two right now. And they could have a third fight probably if they wanted to. Maybe not run it back initially, or run it back right now, but you have a third fight down the line, and I'm sure everyone would tune in again.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like that story itself, it's so interesting because it's like the backstory is like when Pate is coming from kickboxing, sees Izzy as the champ. then Izzy does the interview where he says like, "Oh, someday he'll be bragging about how he beat me, and I'll be the greatest of all time." Or he says something along those lines.
Yeah.
And Pereira's like, "I'm not just gonna let him say that." And it's like,
Uh-huh.
and then to go out there, rack up the wins, beat him. It's about as crazy as it gets. And then for Izzy to get his revenge, you really can't come up with much better of a storyline.
For sure. I think I don't know, not to like get off the fight right now, but what do you want to see Izzy fight next, or who do you want to see Izzy fight next?
I don't know, to be honest. I was gonna ask you that too. I don't know, because I'm looking at that division. He's got 2 wins over Whitaker, 2 wins over Vittori, the win over Cannonier. So it's like he already beat all the top guys in that division. It's like Whitaker's probably the most deserving, but he lost the first 2. I have a hard time giving him a third fight.
Yeah.
And then it's like, do you go to Hamzat Chimaev is a name that's getting tossed around. I don't really love that. I think that Chimaev should probably beat one person at 185, ranked at 185 beforehand. I'm not sure that a win over Gilbert Burns should get you a title shot at 185.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make sense to me. Went over Kevin Holland too, but it's like Kevin Holland's an unranked welterweight. As much as I love Kevin Holland, doesn't really bode well for a 185 title shot. And it's like, then I looked yesterday, the highest ranked guy he hasn't fought and beat is Dricus du Plessis.
I knew you were going to say that too. Is he really the highest ranked?
Yeah, he's the highest ranked. And I don't think Duplessis should get a title shot. I don't like Duplessis, and Izzy slaughters him. Izzy does bad things to him. So with that in mind, the one guy that I think could be interesting, if they don't do the third fight with Pereira, which I don't really think they're going to, just because he knocked him out like that, it's like I think Jan Blachowicz low-key makes sense. Because Jan said he would cut to 185. He said, you just got your revenge over Pereira. So let's go back to back, and you can get revenge over me. I'll cut to 185. I think that could be compelling. You get him getting his revenge over Pereira. He can go right back for it again with Blachowicz. I think that kind of makes sense if Blachowicz can make the weight.
Yeah, I mean, I would. That's it. I didn't know that, so yeah, I would really like to watch that. And then Jan deserves it, as in he a former champion. He's been fighting top guys like for the past however many years. So I don't mind if he comes down and gets a title shot, because he let Adesanya try him when he went up there. So he'd cut to 185. Do you think he can though?
He fought at middleweight before, but it's like it's not an easy cut by any means. It's tough. It's definitely tough. I don't think it's easy by any means, but like if you're Blachowicz, he's in a bad spot at 205 right now because he's got the draw over Magomed, and it seems like Magomed is the guy that they kind of want to push out of those two. It feels like, because even after the fight, there was a whole thing about like they were saying that Magomed won, like Rogan like said stuff to Magomed, which I felt like a draw was the right scorecard in that fight. I had 3 rounds Blachowicz and 2 rounds Magomed with a 10-8. So I thought the judges got that right. I thought that was a draw. But like they're not really gonna. I don't think he's gonna get a great shot of any like big opportunity at 205, just the way that division's looking. So I think going down to 185 makes sense, and it's worth a shot. I think because if there was like a big time name or a guy that really deserved it at 185. I wouldn't say that, but it's like there's not really a better option, so I'm open to it.
That's fair too, because he is not in the best position, and you got to think if you drop down and you can fight for the title immediately, like that's exactly what you wanted to do at your division you're at now. So, I think I like that one as a little wild card if that happens. But if not, I mean, me personally, I'll take a Whitaker third fight. I thought Whitaker won that second fight. But it was razor close. But yeah, they're just as now we're struggling. Now that Izzy got the belt back, we're struggling through the same things of like, oh well, who can he fight because he's beat everyone.
Yeah, and I wish like during this little like 2-fight run between him and Pereira, I wish someone would have like really got on a string of good wins. You know what I mean? Like. But I do agree with your point of like I think Whitaker is like the second best middleweight by a mile. Like if you book him and Pereira right now, like I think Whitaker wins that. Like, I don't want to say easily because it's Beheda,
Uh-huh.
but it's like I'm picking Whitaker in that fight. He's probably the favorite in that fight too. So it's like if you're looking purely skilled, like that's the best guy in the division that's not named Adesanya.
Yeah.
And then kind of off the back of that, what do you think Pereira does? Because I think 205 is where he should be headed. I don't really see the need to stay at 185, but I do want to hear your thoughts on that.
Isn't that I was trying to watch some of the Dana press conference yesterday after the fight. I think he did. I think he had mentioned that 205.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, that one makes sense. As in, I guess yeah. He beat Izzy. Izzy beat him back, so they did their thing. But it makes sense as in how everyone just says he is insanely huge at 205,
He is. He's
and he's
massive.
way too big for the division. So I mean, I can see that. That makes sense. Then him going up to 205. Also, God, he would make the 205 way more interesting too, putting him in there. So that'd be fun because 205 lacks talent a good amount of times. So, I mean, right now it's a little kind of there's like 3 or 4 people.
I like
Or
some
maybe
of the I like some of the guys at the top, but once you get out of that like top group, it's like, ooh, there's a big drop off in that division. They could use it.
Uh-huh. So and then right now, yeah, because even right now it is a little interesting because there's at least 4. There is a top group. It's not like a top 2 or 3, but yeah, Pereira put him in there and start. And then already thinking about certain matchups and stuff. So
Yeah, and like from like a matchup standpoint, like I like his chances against Jamal Hill and Yuri Prohashka much better than I do him versus Whitaker or him versus Vittori. Not
uh,
that now that's not because Hill and Prohashka are bad, but those guys are probably going to strike with them, right? That's why I was able to beat Izzy the first time because Izzy was willing to strike with them, and Yuri and Jamal probably both strike with them. I don't think Whitaker or Vittori do. So it's like from a pure matchup standpoint, he's probably got a better chance at winning those fights too. On top of that,
yeah, I think so too. 'Cause that is true though. Like it's crazy. Not that I mean, not that UFC's been specifically handpicking for him for Pereira, but he has still not fought a wrestler, and that's insane. But so like, and then I guess yeah. As soon as he goes up there too, he's still not going to really have to fight a wrestler.
unless they
And
get
that's
Magomed, which I don't think they would.
and I didn't. Yeah, I'm saying I don't think they would. So I don't know. It's just funny how if the UFC likes you, if you make money for them, they will make sure you get the right matchups.
Yeah, this is what I think is going to happen. I think he's going to go to 205, and they're going to book him against Jamal Hill for the title, and then you get the whole like because after Jamal Hill beat Glover, like Pereira's in the cage, they have a little face off, so they'll market that as like Pereira looking to get revenge after Jamal beat Glover. So it'll be
Uh-huh.
like a similar story where he's like going after the champ, and then if Pereira wins, they get to do Pereira and Yuri Prohashka, which is a great fight. If
That's
Jamal
awesome.
if Jamal wins, then you get Jamal coming off a win over Pereira, which would be absolutely massive for him. And he is then fighting Yuri. So it's like you're either building a star with Jamal or you're getting an already star, Alex Beheda, a title shot and a title. So it's like, looks like a win-win to me. And you don't have to rush Yuri back from that shoulder injury. So I think
Uh-huh.
that's probably what they end up doing.
Yeah. No, I mean I'm there for it. I like the game plan because I think who would love an Alex versus Yuri fight? But if Hill beats Alex, like you can't say, well, he beat an old 40-year-old in Glover and stuff like that. Because that's 2 impressive wins back to back, then at that point, you're the real deal. You can't really hate on that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Do you have anything on the main event before we jump down to the co-main?
No, I mean it was a great fight. I will say, because I took Alex in the first one, and I was heavily on Izzy in this one. I know Izzy runs his mouth a lot and likes to talk and stuff, but the way he was talking specifically about this fight and for this fight, I felt like he was going to get it done. He seemed very tuned in.
I think it was an energy thing where it's like
Uh-huh.
what he was saying was like whatever, but the way he was saying it is like,
Yeah.
oh, he's zoned in. And at the
Hmm.
same time, another point that this kind of made me think of was that a lot of people talk about Izzy going out there and having to get the 4th win over a guy or a win over a guy that had already beat him 3 times. But nobody brought up the opposite side of that coin where it's like Pereira's already beaten him 3 times. So like what makes him like go and work hard? What makes him not get overconfident? Which it's
True.
like you've already beat the guy 3 times. You're gonna go out there and do it a fourth time. And you see him up against the cage in that finishing sequence, like he's just throwing his combos. It's like
Mhm.
I've done this how many times? I've beat him 3 times. I've knocked him out twice. And then he kind of gets in that mind frame, and he ends up getting caught. I don't know if I'm not gonna say that's why he got caught, but I think that's the point where, that something that not many people talked about and could have played a
Yeah,
factor.
it doesn't help for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then jumping down to the co-main, Gilbert Burns is able to get a decision win over Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal retires afterwards. What did you think of the fight?
Um, I enjoyed it. I think, because this is kind of how I had it. I think, did you have it in best bets going, you said take decision or going the distance?
Yeah, I had Gilbert by decision. So
Decision. Yeah. I like that. I like that too, because, I think as much as we have apparently some Masvidal just haters here at Vendetta. Oh my
that is true.
God.
That is true.
So outspoken about him. But um, yeah, no, I the fight itself, I mean, it's what it was. Like, he like he said. I mean, he's old. He looked old. He's been fighting for 20 years. He's fighting in backyards, all that stuff. I think so, especially too for how uber confidence and his mic work. When Masvidal after the fight said like, your favorite Hooper don't got a 3-pointer no more. He said, I don't feel good, or I don't feel the same when I step in here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he did about as much as he could do in there. And like I said, he's always crafty, hard to knock out, hard to submit. So he was surviving in there and was able to take it the distance, but just not really he got the leg kicks working and the body kicks working, but I don't think he ever really got the hands going.
No, I don't think he threw a lot either.
Really.
So
and that's so weird for I feel like a Masvidal fight. So not that he has like the greatest output, but not to throw a lot, or not to really throw at all. Like I wouldn't think. I don't know. I wouldn't think Gilbert would like outstrike him, or out throw him a little bit if this was a couple. If this was years ago. But I mean, I guess Gilbert looked good enough, did what he needed to do. I think it was good for him to calling out those title shots, and I think wasn't a bad way to end your career. Because the other thing is too, even when you are 20 years in, I think he's retiring at the right time, because some people and have knockout or get KO'd multiple times before they leave. So he's leaving the UFC never being submitted and getting knocked out once.
Yep. I agree with you. I'm 100% with you. I think the volume from Jorge, I don't know why I didn't throw that much. It might have been because Gilbert's a good counter striker, so he was worried about the counters, didn't want to get caught. And, I think there might have been like this little thing in the back of his head where it's like, this is my last one. I don't feel great out here. I don't need to really push my, get really pushed down on the metal and get finished. So it's like, I'll just make it my 15 minutes and get out of here. I'm not saying that was the mindset, but it could have been. It could have been. And I agree with you in terms of Jorge getting out at the right time. Got out at the perfect time, in my opinion, because like the 3 fights with him and Usman, the 2 with Usman and the 1 with Covington, he's probably not beating either of those guys based off what we saw. And then this fight with Gilbert, it gave him a good chance to, if he won, he was probably getting a title shot, whether it be immediately against Leon or whether it be the winner of Leon and Colby. Like, however that ended up shaking out, I think his next fight would have been for a title. And then at that point, it's like worth going out there and having a puncher's chance at it. Like, even if he's not going to beat Colby, even if he's not going to beat Leon, he's got a puncher's chance. So, and then once he loses this fight and that prospect is kind of gone, you hang up the gloves rather than what would he had to do? Like, does he fight Kevin Holland? Does he fight like Wonder Boy again? Does he fight Michelle Piejeda? Like, what does he do that's like really interesting? That's really like, and like you said, you're running the risk of getting knocked out too, because Gilbert had him hurt in the third. Gilbert was landing a lot of shots in the third. He ends up going for the takedown late in that fight. Might have been able to get a finish if he keeps it standing. So I think you're right. He's got the money. He doesn't need to keep fighting. Gets out at the right time. So I think it was perfect for Jorge. And that was a good way to go out in front of his hometown too.
And Ken, when you were saying like he doesn't really need to push it to the last fight too, I mean, like you don't want to get knocked out in your last fight, and especially you don't want to get knocked out in your hometown too. That would have been tough. So
Yeah.
I think he was good. He was able, to at least do his whole little mic drop at the end and say everything. I will say because I was just thinking, was that first Usman fight? Was that 2020?
Yes, it was during. I'm not.
Quarantine, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he stepped in on short notice because Gilbert Burns pulled out with COVID. So, because he stepped in on 8 days. And I remember there was a picture of him eating like pizza on the plane. And he was talking about how he had to cut like 20 pounds. So, because that's how he got the immediate rematch was because he then was like, I stepped in on short notice. So,
Yeah.
I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it was like right in the heart of COVID.
I was going to say, too, even, I mean, that's, it's 3 years now. I would say too, it's just because I like Masvidal. So I mean, every time I watch his fights and stuff, I'm never really worried on the feet and stuff like that. But I'll say because he's so good at wall walking to get up, and I think you could see that in the Usman fight. He gets up multiple times from like an Usman takedown, but it's just these last couple fights, I just don't see it. Like when he gets taken down, it almost feels like not necessarily strength, but he just doesn't have the explosiveness anymore to even get off the floor, off the mat, to then start the wall walk. It just seems stuck every time, and it sucks too because especially he's especially in that Colby fight too. He needs the knockout and stuff like that. It just seems like he can't get up. And then I'll say too, I mean, and then I guess he's just old. He's been doing a while because even on the feet, he feels like he doesn't have the explosion for those, quick, not quick knockouts, but the explosion to catch someone or throw a big combo and keep it going and keep applying the pressure. But yeah.
I think that's a really, really good point because if you look at the first fight with Kumar that you mentioned, he loses that fight because he was getting controlled. But a lot of that was him up against the fence. Like a large portion was him with his back up against the fence. And because the narrative then and then after that fight was that Usman's a foot stomper. Because he was holding him up against the fence and stopping on the feet. So that's a good point and then you see him, the second fight, he gets taken down, but it ends up being the knockout that gets him. He gets caught. The fight against Colby is when you really see that takedown defense go. And your point about the striking, like, look at the knee he landed against Ben Askren, the explosiveness in that, and then the ones he was throwing against Gilbert. The ones he was throwing against Gilbert would just get blocked, and then Gilbert would come back with a overhand counter. And it's like he just didn't have the pop, and it's like the fight against Till was a good example when you said like he uses the explosiveness.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, he steps in with the quick hands, very explosive, closing the distance, lands the power shots, and that's a good point where that part of his game was just absolutely gone. So, I mean, it's gone. There's no reason to hang around. So, credit to him.
And I said one other thing. I saw this somewhere saying like Gilbert is there, like not there, like by itself, but he's so talented, just as an athlete and everything. And Masvidal was always just fighting the best people, just because he's so skilled. Like he doesn't necessarily have that raw intangibles and talents like that. So I think too, with the the explosiveness helped out because he's already so skilled to be in there. So when he had the explosiveness, like we were saying against Hill and on the knee, or what puts him over the edge to really be able to compete with the top guys. Because when you lose it, because I didn't even think he was trying to land any of those knees on Burns. It looked to me like he was using it as a way to step in and get in close for some reason. Like he was throwing the knee to be right there face to face with them and then try to throw a couple. But then it just, I don't know, so like telegraphed almost. And then it's Burns, so right hand was coming and waiting, and he hit him with it every time.
And that's how Rafael Fiziev set up his knockout against RDA. Was he threw the flying knee 2 or 3 times over the course of the fight. Then he throws the knee, comes short, and the second he plants, he lets the right hand rip when RDA was looking to counter. So that may be what he was setting up. He just never got it off, I guess. But he was getting countered bad. So I do think it was the right time for him to hang it up. And for Burns, I thought this was like I don't think it was a bad performance, but I think he could have went out there and got the finish. And I like Gilbert Burns. You know, I think he's one of the most underrated fighters in that division. His jiu-jitsu is lethal, power in his hands, a great counter striker. He does a lot of things that I love that I think can cause a lot of problems to those top guys. But it's like, you know, the position you're in. It's like, you know, Colby Covington's fighting for the title next, right? It's not a very big chance that the UFC is walking off that. So it's like, what did you do to like separate yourself from Bilal Muhammad? Who's probably the guy he's competing with for the next title shot after that. It's like, you went out there and got a decision win. Doesn't really set you apart from Bilal Muhammad. You know what I mean? So that I think is a fair criticism. But I also think the way he played it after the fact was smart, where Gilbert after the fight said, you know, he said, what I don't like is that he gave the UFC an ultimatum. He said, you know, if you don't give me the next title shot after Colby, I'll go somewhere else. I don't think that was smart. But he said, I'll be the backup fighter, and then you give me the title shot afterwards. I think that makes sense because that's exactly what Colby did. Beats Jorge, is the backup fighter, and then they say, well, he beat Jorge and he was the backup fighter, so we'll give him a title shot. So now you're holding the UFC to the same standard where I beat Colby, let me go be the backup, and then give me the shot afterwards. So he's kind of playing them at their own game.
Yeah, I mean, once he made the not the call up, but yeah, when he had the mic at the end, I like the game plan. I think it's funny that I guess beating Masvidal might be you know, what you need to do to get a title shot, I guess. So yeah, I mean, he's following the pattern too. Well, then we'll see who has the Dana White privilege if he follows the same pattern and doesn't get the shot. I think, and then, but kind of because when you were first touching on it earlier about Gilbert specifically, I just think because to me he's one of the most like well-rounded fighters. When he shouldn't be, I should probably look at him more like his jiu-jitsu is insane and that's his top. But I just don't understand for someone that's jiu-jitsu is that good, just how he doesn't get more finishes with it though. Like I remember that he fought Wonder Boy, right? That was like a year or two ago. And you just could never submit him. Like Wonder Boy's not even known as like a wrestler too, or like maybe his defensive wrestling is pretty on point. But I just think, and I remember I thought if Wonder Boy won one round, but I remember Gilbert won 2 rounds by just sitting on top of him and stuff like that. So unless, I mean, that's what he needed to do, that's how he felt comfortable. But it's just like, I think that would separate you from someone like Bilal, is if your jiu-jitsu is that good, you should be getting more finishes though.
Yeah, and to kind of touch on that point, I pulled up his record. His last submission win was the win against Magny, which
that was the recent one though.
That was the most recent one. That was also Neil Magny. Neil Magny's a good fighter, but like I'm not gonna go and parade a submission over Neil Magny, and that means you get a title shot. Shavkat Rakhmonov did the same thing, so it's like that doesn't really separate him from a lot of guys. Not to disrespect Neil Magny, but it's kind of the fact. And then going all the way back, his last submission was 2019 against Mike Davis. He got a rear naked choke. Then you got to go before that. You got to go back to 2016. Got an arm bar. So it's like even the win against Mike Davis is like Mike Davis, great striker, entertaining fighter, not the best guy on the roster. But then he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fights until that Magny fight. So doesn't get a lot of submission finishes.
That was one of my big problems. And then obviously that last Neil Magny fight kind of like I couldn't say when's the last time because it just happened. But that was just one of my problems. And then like I've never gone that deep and looked how far. So that's so interesting how, it's that because that's what it feels like. And now knowing that's like it's a fact, he just doesn't get many.
Yeah. But, and it's interesting too, because it's like that Neil Magny fight, to your point, was Gilbert Burns said, I'm fighting in Brazil. He was like, I'm fighting in Brazil. I don't care who you book me against. Give me literally anybody. He was like, I will literally fight anybody. I just want to fight Brazil. And they went down the list and went, this guy's booked. This guy's booked. This guy just fought, and the first guy available was Neil Magny. So they said, well, he's like 9th in the rankings, so we'll give you Neil Magny. And he went out there and submitted him the first round like he should have. Like that fight, no, I don't think anyone really thought that Neil Magny was winning that fight.
They say, yeah, like you're saying, puncher's chance. Even in that one, there wasn't a big puncher's chance. But and I think I like Neil Magny. I think he's good. I think he has a lot of fights in the UFC, but I don't know if that top tier. I just don't know if he can. And that's not the best matchup for him either, though. But yeah.
I'm with you. And I don't know if it's just because like guys play it super safe with him, or it's like he like Wonder Boy never gave off his back. Jorge never gave off his back, so maybe that's why. But like, I don't know. That's a good point that he doesn't get the submissions, but he does utilize that grappling. But like the entertainment level of Gilbert Burns as a striker, like if Gilbert Burns never attempted a takedown, he'd be one of the most entertaining strikers in the UFC. The fight with Hamzat proves that. He'll go out there, he'll throw heavy hands, he throws hard, and then he just gets more reserved, I think, when it comes to grappling. He doesn't take as many chances with the grappling. I don't know if he's holding up his reputation. He doesn't want to get in a position where he gets submitted himself. But yeah, I think that's a good point. I think you're right. He does not get many submission finishes. Simple as that.
And also, because one last thing before we go to the next fight, though. So yeah, like you were saying, Gilbert is very entertaining. So a win, I'll always be happy. Because I want to see him. I want to see him fight like Colby or someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even a Leon win would be fun too. But I do kind of actually really want to see him fight Colby. And then I was just gonna cap it one more time with just a good career for Masvidal, good send off. So the fight in general, it's pretty cool too. That I didn't know. That's crazy. 20 years, Miami, and then Dana in the press conference was like, "No, this city's phenomenal. It's like we're gonna be back. This is gonna be an annual thing." And it's like, did you had to go there first to see that? You couldn't assume that. Like 20 years, that's insane.
That is funny. Yeah, and one last thing on my side as well. Covington and Burns is a great fight because neither will get their grappling off, I don't think. It's going to be a good fight for the same reason Burns and Hamzat was good. It'll be good for the same reason that the two fights between Usman and Covington were good. Those are two grapplers who are going to go strike, but they're going to be super aggressive. It'll become a brawl. It'll be a fun fight. Gilbert and Leon, you run the risk of it becoming heavy grappling with Gilbert just looking to control that fight. Respectable. I know it's not easy to do, but that doesn't, in terms of viewing pleasure and like having it be a super entertaining fight, doesn't really play into that style. So I'm with you with the Burns and Covington. Moving down the card, Rob Font was able to get a knockout win over Adrian Yanez. This was, how do I word this? I'm very high on Yanez. I don't want to speak for you, but I know you've got a Yanez post out there, so I think you're high on Yanez.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. Yeah, I'm very high on Yanez. Maybe he was rushed a little bit here. Doesn't have another ranked fight, and they throw him in there with Rob Font. In hindsight, maybe he was rushed a little bit because, he's got some flaws. He's not perfect by any means, but it's like as a pure boxer, I still think he's a great fighter. His accuracy and his speed and his power, I love it all, but he started getting hit with the jab. Rob Font did a really good job of establishing that jab. And that jab, when Rob Font's jab was landing, you could tell it was hurting Yanez. And then from there, he was able to unload with the big shot that put Yanez down. I was really impressed with Rob Font, but I'm going to be honest, I was rooting for Yanez. Not because I don't like the words in the sense of like, I like this guy, so I'm going to, want them to win and root for them to win and be biased. Just thought that Yanez getting a win and kind of entering himself into that upper echelon and seeing Yanez fight guys like Cheeto and Piotr Yan and Song Yadong, some of those guys in that range of the division, I thought would have been really interesting. But that's not what we got. Rob Font was able to get it done. So credit to Rob Font, but I'll be honest and sit here and say I didn't really expect that outcome at all.
Yeah, I didn't expect that outcome, but I never liked the matchup when it was announced too. Because I am a big Giannis guy, and I thought it was a pretty big jump I didn't want because I'm rooting for him to like maybe touch gold one day, but just start getting some more entertaining fights. I mean, they gave him a shot. I mean, I guess that's what you want though. You want to get that. He's going for number 6. I thought maybe it was a little high for him. I wouldn't mind seeing one more like in the even 9-10 range somewhere there. I'd have to look at the division, but I mean, Rob Font's good. He just and he's hard to knock out too, and he's got such good boxing because he was winning rounds in that Aldo fight, and then would get dropped and lose the round. He was looking good, maybe winning a round or two in that Cheeto fight, and would get dropped and lose the round. So I think
to your point, he outstruck Cheeto by a wide margin. He landed I was looking yesterday because Max Holloway's fighting this weekend. I was looking at the most strikes landed in fights, and that I was surprised that Cheeto and Rob Font fight was second in terms of most strikes landed in a fight between both guys. It was Max and Cater number 1, and then Cheeto and Font number 2. And Cheeto landed more shots. So not to interrupt you, but that was kind of adding to your point.
Yeah, so I think I mean I was waiting for, and I thought Giannis, I'm not even mad. I think tough loss, it's fine. But I thought he still looked good in the fight. He was touching him up. You could, like you said, you could definitely tell Font's punches compared to Giannis's punches had a little bit more sting on him. But he's already getting him with the shiner. He was landing. I think I mean, he got caught. I don't know. He got stunned, and then I will say that was a beautiful knockout. It reminded me a little bit of the Overeem Ngannou a little bit of how it wasn't the straight like uppercut head back, but just the way it seemed like his head launched first, and his body followed, and his feet kind of came up from under him. So I mean, at least it was it was a highlight reel knockout too. So that was a fun to watch for the fight. I don't want to say, just talking about Giannis, so I don't want to say it was an awesome knockout like it happened to him, but it was as a fight fan, it was a fun knockout to watch though.
Yeah, and I really wish we would have saw 3 rounds of that fight because that fight the pace was crazy. Both guys were throwing, both guys were landing. If we saw 3 rounds of that, I think we're looking at a fight of the year contender probably. I know there have been some really good fights this year already, but 3 rounds with the pace they were going at and the shots they were landing would have been a really fun fight to see go a little bit longer. And that's not trying to take anything away from Rob Font, because I think if it goes longer, it probably helps Rob Font more. I think his cardio is a little better. He throws with a little bit more volume. So I think that fight was only going to get better for Font as it went on. But yeah, I think the point you made about Yanez, all the skills that made me think, and I assume you think that Yanez was a great fighter. It's I saw all those same skills. I saw the hand speed. I saw the power. I saw the accuracy. I saw that he landed some really good body shots. I saw all the things that I liked. But he just out-veteraned, right? There's some things that he can work on, right? I don't think he's done by any means. I think this was a really solid fight or not a really solid fight for him, a really solid learning experience to where you can get back in the gym, figure out some things that you can do before you step in there again with some of those guys in the top 6, 7 of that division, because that division's a lot of great fighters. So I think he can use a fight or two against some guys in that 10 to 15 range and maybe make another shot at it. But I'm not out on Yanez by any means. So but it was a great fight for Rob Font as well.
I will say, is there any and I mean, not really, this is a big overreaction, but I wonder, is there any chin questions for Giannis? I mean, he got caught with a perfect shot. It's not like, every time he gets hit, he was getting rocked necessarily. But I will say, because, Rob Font, I don't think he was, tapping him up. I don't think he ever, knocked down Jose or Cheeto. And then he went 5 rounds with I don't know if it was 5 rounds. I think they main evented, but against Cody Garbrandt, and couldn't get him out of there. And that was only a year or two ago when we've seen everyone else, knock out Cody, and Font couldn't get that done. And that went to decision. So I wonder, I'd just be curious what Giannis's losses look like if they're all KOs.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, and I'm looking back here to try and see when his last, um, Rob Font's last KO was Marlon Moraes.
That
He
doesn't
went,
count.
yeah, exactly. He goes 5 rounds with Cody. Cody's chin is also gone. Like
Uh-huh.
I like Cody, but the chin doesn't look great on Cody. He gets a win over Marlon Moraes, who is the only guy in the world whose chin is worse than Cody's. Um,
Yeah,
and then decision win over Ricky Simone. That aged really well.
that did.
But yeah, and then Thomas Almeida in 2018. So he's not out here getting submission or getting knocked daily. Matt Schnell in 2016. Not a lot of knockout wins for him. But I'll
Uh-huh.
also say he usually doesn't land shots that clean. That'll be the one big
Uh-huh.
difference. He usually doesn't land shots that clean. Um, I'd be more concerned about the jab, honestly. I think if there's a thing that I'd be real worried about with Yanez, it's him fighting the guys a little bit longer who can really hit him with that jab. Because he struggled with Randy
Mm.
Costa in the first round, while Costa was landing the jab. So I think the jab is probably the biggest concern that I'd have for him, and not the chin. But if he gets knocked out again, then I think is when the chin concerns for me personally would come up.
Uh-huh. That was just a thought, just because knowing Font's last fights, but also you can't that punch, like you said, landed so clean. I don't think anyone's gonna look at that punch and be like, "Oh God, his chin's done." Like that was
Yeah.
just a perfect shot.
I'm with you though, because I think you it could be the start of something. It's something to
Uh-huh.
monitor at least. And
Uh-huh.
then for both these guys, I'll be interested to see what they do with Rod Font, because he's fought a lot of guys at bantamweight, and right now he's sitting at number 6. Um, and around him in the rankings, you've got guys like Cheeto, Yan, Cruz, Song Yadong. Song Yadong's fighting Ricky Simone in a couple weeks. I think if Song gets a win, maybe that's a fight. Maybe Dominic Cruz. There's some interesting things they can do to him. And for the side of Yanez, I pulled up the 10 to 15 in the bantamweight division. It is possibly the best 10 to 15 out there. You've got
Uh-huh.
Ricky Simone, Umar Nurmagomedov, Yanez, Chris Gutierrez, Jonathan Martinez, and Saeed Nurmagomedov. That division in the 10
That's
to 15 range
insane.
is crazy. There isn't like one
Yeah.
old guy where you're like, oh, that guy's not. There isn't like I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there isn't. Some divisions have guys where it's like, all right, we've got some bad guys, but that division is all young, great
Uh-huh.
fighters, pretty much.
Yeah. So I did even that. So Rob thought maybe that was the shot that taking that fight, because that's scary. That list of the people around him.
hmm And then moving down the card, Kevin Holland, Santiago Ponzinibbio. I thought this was a good fight for Holland. Kevin Holland is, he'll win against guys like Ponzinibbio, Tim Means, Cowboy Oliveira. And we'll have to see what happens when he gets in there with some better competition. But as far as this fight goes, aside from getting kicked in the leg, I thought he fought really well. Leg kicks were a problem, but he was able to land the hands. He countered some of them. He stepped into some leg kicks with some jabs. He eventually lands the right hand. So, I thought it was a good fight or actually it was a left hand. It was a left hook, I think,
Left-handed, yeah.
which is crazy because his right hook's his go-to weapon. Or the right
Uh-huh.
hook and the right straight both land with a lot of power, and he's so long. When he catches you on the end of that right straight, like he did
Hey,
Buckley, oh,
uh-huh.
it's scary. But that was a great fight for him, and he didn't really throw his right hand that much. In the second round, I was like, Kevin, will you please just let the right hand go? He ends up getting a knockout with the left hand. Great fight for Kevin Holland, though. I thought the stoppage was good. Santiago Ponzinibbio kind of tested it a little bit, I thought it was a
Uh-huh.
pretty good stoppage. He face planted and then took, I think, 2 ground and pound shots, at least one. Thought it was a good
I,
stoppage and a good win for Kevin Holland.
yeah, I think he might have only taken one, but that could have easily been 3 or 4, and it wasn't getting any better. I had no real problem with the stoppage. I'm gonna work backwards here. I had no problem with the stoppage, and then the knockout itself just so long. He's just the length on him. I didn't even think like watching that we'll say that like combination or whatever, or just watching that part. I did not think that was going to be the knockout punch right there, but he just catches it. I caught him like perfectly on the chin. But I thought it was like, oh, he was out of range. Nope, not for Kevin Holland. It just always like gets to him. Um, But I will say, kind of like you were saying, I mean, we're not Ponzinibbio isn't like one of the top guys, and that's not gonna like get you a title shot by any means. But I will say, this is a fight. This is, it's the fight Kevin Holland should win, like you're saying with Oliveira and Tim Means. But I will say Ponzinibbio, I think, is the best of those three, and it's a step in the right
Yes,
direction,
yes.
though. As in, like, this is a fight he should win, but it's not necessarily a gimme. Like Ponzinibbio will still beat you. So I think it's a good sign seeing him, win fights he should win, do what he needs to do. But he is slowly etching up in competition and stuff. So I thought that that's a good name to have under the belt. But this is kind of what messed him up. I think when he was at middleweight, right? Because he went down. So when he was at middleweight, he's able to have fun fights, beat all those other guys. But once he started getting near the top, is when he started struggling. So I think this is someone that is kind of near the top a little bit. Um, so and he got the win over him. So it gives me a little more confidence he could maybe beat, as we get closer and closer. But yeah, I still don't think he's ready for any of the top dogs for sure.
Yeah, and Ponzinibbio is also one of the best guys that's not ranked, right? They rank him
Hmm.
through 15. If you had to come up with 5 names that weren't ranked at welterweight that are the next best 5, Ponzinibbio is probably in there. Had really close fights with Pereira, had a really close fight with Jeff Neal. So it was like he's done good work.
Uh-huh.
But it's like he's in a point in his career where after he had that injury that knocked him out for a
Yeah.
couple of years, just hasn't been as good, but still a good fighter, good name to have, like you said. Good step up in competition in comparison to like because he's got the losses at middleweight where he's getting wrestled by Brunson, getting wrestled by Vittori, got beat by Hamza, and got beat by Wonder Boy. And it's like he could have won that Wonder Boy fight. Like he ended up getting beat badly
Uh-huh.
in a lot of the things that people remember from that fight is the third and fourth round of him getting beat very badly. First 2 rounds were competitive, and he declined to like wrestle him. It's like he could
Uh-huh.
have went out there and wrestled a little bit more and maybe beat Wonder Boy. That's just like not me saying he would have, but there is that potential there.
Well, I
And
think there's. Oh, my bad.
go ahead.
So I think there's like that's almost like the pick and choose of how you want a career to be in the UFC. Because not saying he can't be a top contender or win the belt even, but yeah, maybe he could have wrestled. Maybe he could have won that fight and moved himself up the rankings. But he also, he was in there having fun. He said, "I'm gonna try to. We're not gonna. I'm not. No one's gonna wrestle. We're gonna stand up and fight the whole time." And because of that, he had a fight of the year candidate.
Hmm.
So it's like he could. It's almost like the Michael Chandler thing a little bit. He could have maybe won with his wrestling, and fought a little bit better, a little smarter. But instead, he fought the most entertaining way and got rewarded not with a win, but with more fans and a fight of the year candidate. So it's
And
just like,
he got an opportunity too. He's fighting
uh,
Connor and he's going on tough. So it's like I think you have a good point there where you have one or the other and you can choose either path.
no,
Um, And for Kevin, Jorge Masvidal retired, like we said earlier. He was ranked 11. Kevin Holland may end up finding himself in the rankings after that.
uh,
After Jorge dips out, he might be ranked 15th. And I will say, I hope Kevin Holland can work his way up this division once again because I like the idea of seeing Kevin Holland fight against some of these top guys. For example, Kevin Holland should not fight Jeff Neal next. But in a
oh
hypothetical
god,
scenario where that fight happens, it's a banger. It's like some of those guys in the top 10, in the top 5, they're really interesting fights that you can put together for Kevin Holland because at a minimum, you're getting a fun fight. So I hope he can. And also, Kevin Holland's only 30. Like, he's got the time to go out there and stack up some wins. Like, his
uh-huh.
career is far from done.
Especially the way with the the schedule he's on and the company man they say he is. Always taking fights, always fighting too. So I mean, as long as he's not really getting knocked out in fights or taking too much damage, keep getting better and keep getting opportunities to stack those wins.
And he broke his hand against Wonder Boy in December.
Uh-huh.
It's April.
Yeah.
It's like that's a quick turnaround for breaking your hand. So to your point there, I think next for Kevin Holland, I think he should fight a ranked opponent. And right now we've got Pereira at 15 is booked against Wonder Boy. Jack Della Maddalena at 14. That's a fun fight, but I don't think you burn those guys by putting them together.
Uh-huh.
Should probably each give them someone separate. And then you've got Neil Magny at 12 and Michael Chiesa at 13. I think that's a fight there where I think the Chiesa fight makes sense because Chiesa is a guy that will go out there and look to grapple you, and he's a very good grappler. That was Kevin Holland. What prevented Kevin Holland from being an elite guy at 185? So I think letting him test that against a guy like Chiesa, who isn't one of the best guys in that division, who's a good grappler, not the best guy, not as well-rounded as some other guys, still a really good fighter. I think that's an appropriate test for Kevin Holland in terms of like a next step. Or they could give him another unranked guy like Ponzinibbio, and you can get another fight like similar to Ponzinibbio where they go out there and strike, and you get a fun, entertaining fight. But it's just not a ranked opponent. So there's kind of two options there, but I kind of like either of them.
Yeah, that's funny because my first thought was Chiesa. I was like, oh no, because it's gonna be a wrestler again. That's what he just struggled with. I mean, you can't keep hiding from it. Yeah, we got to see it eventually. But I also too, we'll see if he can handle the wrestling a little bit more. That maybe he's like bigger for the weight division now. And see where he's at with that. I like. I thought I think a Magny or a Chiesa name or like those type of names. I mean, it sounds about right for him. And I think that's what I'm saying. Like just kind of keep because he's one where I think it's probably best to keep like not one big win and then boom, he's up there with like the contenders. I think it's one where he slowly marches up the rankings a little bit. And then, it's him. So he's not going to really sit out. Like he's fine with taking the fights and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Also, I was looking at the rankings too there. Vicente Luque at 10. Right. That's a fun fight. Him and Vicente Luque. The problem is if he beats Luque, then you're in the situation that you just said we should avoid, where now we're starting to really build ourselves. Now we're in the top 10 again. Then you run out of easy fights eventually. Uh-huh. And easy may not be the best word, but you're jumping in too soon to the top guys when you should still be adding some small bits and pieces to your game. So it's like, that's a fun fight, but that's another example of if he gets a win over Chiesa and then maybe moves on to Luque, you can kind of slowly build through the rankings. So it's like that's kind of what I hope happens for Kevin Holland.
I think when listening to, I really like if I'm looking at it from like Holland's perspective, I do kind of really like that Chiesa fight now because I mean you're gonna have to test the wrestling before you really start trying to move up in the division or like touch gold if you want it. Mm-hmm. For his sake. I would think, sure you're training all the time. I'm sure he does it every day. We're wrestling, but you got to see in octagon competition how that wrestling holds up.
Yeah, and that fight can probably happen soon because Chiesa was supposed to fight Neil Magny on this card, or not Neil Magny, excuse me, Li Jingliang. He was supposed to fight Li Jingliang on Saturday. That fight got canceled, I think, 2 weeks ago. They were looking for a replacement. Buckley was a rumor. Didn't end up happening. So it's like Chiesa's looking for a fight too. Chiesa called out Gunnar Nelson. So maybe that's the direction they go. But I do think Kevin Holland's a ranked guy. So maybe that would sway Chiesa in a different direction. So I think that fight does make sense. And then moving down on the card, big topic of discussion. Raul Rosas Jr., Christian Rodriguez. Rosas did not get the job done. He's 18 years old. Kind of looked like an 18-year-old in there. After the first round, C-Rod really started to pull ahead. And there wasn't like as Rosas started to gas, he looked worse, right? He's strong. He's a strong 18-year-old, which impresses me. But the man strength started to diminish as they got deeper in that fight. C-Rod pulls ahead. Good fight for C-Rod. I think it kind of showed that Rosas has some improvements to make. He wasn't perfect by any means. What'd you make of the fight?
I like not to be this guy, but I definitely I literally just saw the way Rosas came out. And like I said, and this is like, it's not like I study him or anything, but I just got the feeling. I saw the way he came out. And after I think he got the first takedown 2 minutes in after trying for it. And then towards the end of the first round, I was like, okay, I was like, he's going to lose. There's no way. You struggled that hard to get this dude out of there in the first round. I don't see anything really changing or getting better for you because, like I said, you could see he was getting tired already. And then it's just, yeah, I mean, he's young and stuff, and it's fine. You don't need to be undefeated. So
Mhm.
it's good. It's a good lesson, good improvement. But also, you have hands. Like you can set up your shots and your takedowns. I don't know why he was refusing to like set up, because that's too. Also, if you're tired, why jump in immediately with a telegraph shot where you're not going to be at like the ideal position for the takedown? If you're tired, you should be maximizing your stamina and trying to set up the perfect shot. Not that you have to do it, but trying to set up the perfect shot to make that takedown more efficient, and then you could do what you need to do afterwards. So I just think, yeah, it was inexperience. I mean, just think he didn't look great. I mean, I think at least the first round showcased, you know, when he's fresh legs, he was always in control, even though he wasn't necessarily getting the takedown super fast. I think it took him 2 minutes, but you could see he was doing the right things. He was holding them up there, holding them up against the fence, maintaining control. But and then good, I guess, good for Rodriguez. They kept saying like, yeah, that kind of manhandled him the last 2 rounds. But yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. The fight was Rosas will have to, go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and I think this is a problem that Rosas is going to have in his career, where I think he really has true two outcomes that are likely, right? I think he either gets an early submission at this point in his career. He's obviously 18 and can grow, and he's much further ahead than probably almost every single 18-year-old ever, in terms of where he is grappling wise. Um, but at where his skills are at right now, I think he either does what he does in his first fight, where he submits a guy like Jay Perrin very quickly, or he goes out there and really, really goes and grapples hard. He didn't really pace himself in the grappling.
Mm-mm.
In that sense, he's almost the opposite of what we talked about earlier with Gilbert Burns, where Gilbert Burns really likes to be a little bit safer on the ground. Raul Rosas Jr., foot on the gas getting that sub, absolute foot on the gas. And, you need to find the balance, right? Because if you don't get that sub, you're in trouble. But a lot of guys don't have the takedown defense and the ability to fight off submissions like Christian Rodriguez does. And so I think like his next fight, obviously he needs to get the hands a little bit better, needs to set up the takedowns a little bit better, needs to pace himself a little bit better, needs the cardio to be a little bit better. Those are probably the areas that he'll immediately work on. Now, in your next fight, you give him a bad fighter that he can go out there and beat, because if he does, he submits him in the first round, and then he's got all this hype back where he just got the first round submission on a pay-per-view again. Then it's like, do you keep putting him with guys he can submit in the first round? Because he's either going to get that first round submission, or we're going to see what we saw on Saturday, where the guy fights off the grappling early and then really controls the fight in the second and third round. And if he's not fighting Christian Rodriguez in there, that could get ugly. Like, Christian Rodriguez was content with sitting on top. He was content with being on top and going out there and winning that decision. There's other guys who would have looked for a finish. There's other guys who would have postured up and threw some heavy elbows and butchered his face. So it's like he's a tough guy to match up, because you either make him look like the best fighter on the roster by having him run through, bums, which he shouldn't be fighting great guys right now. He should be fighting guys who are near the bottom of the roster. But do you give him another fighter like Rodriguez who can fight off the grappling for a few minutes and then make him tired? I don't think either is a great option.
I say, I thought, no, it was funny. Like, I think that was a great point too, because not even just the submission, but there was other guys that would be just striking for where they had Rosas. I thought I saw a joke that there's like Rodriguez had to have that fight going the distance, like in a parlay or something. Because that rear naked choke was there a couple of times. He just never took it. But I was just say too, like you said, I think he should be fighting lesser guys, because I didn't like the matchup necessarily with Rodriguez. I thought that was a pretty big jump on a second fight after who he fought the first time.
Jay Perrin got cut after he lost that fight, so it's like,
and it was
the jump up is crazy.
Thank you. And it was so weird to me how and like they were, they can build him as a superstar. He already has so much fans. I just don't, and they just continually never really tap into like the greater, like the Mexican audience to like fully build a superstar. And I don't get it. They mess it up every time, or unless they just don't care and don't try. Because Pereira had handpicked fights, give or take. They were also already trying to set up the Izzy, not even build him in a superstar. They were already setting that up. I'm forgetting Patty Pimblett's first couple fights, super handpicked. Hamzat's first couple were super handpicked. I think he fought some dude with a losing record in like 2 or 3 different promotions at one point, and it was just like it was so like they handpick everyone, and then for Rosas they already give him Rodriguez, and it just didn't make sense to me because I don't. It seems like they're good at building superstars other times, but they had the chance with Rosas, and they're just like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, it's crazy because to your point, Christian Rodriguez is better than anyone that Sean O'Malley fought for a large period of time before he fought Petr Yan and Pedro Munoz. Like the fights, Raulian Paiva is not bad, but Raulian Paiva is also now no longer in the UFC. Eddie Wineland was toast. It's like the level of guys that other guys in that position are fighting are far worse than Christian Rodriguez. And it didn't make sense for Christian either, because Christian now, I don't think Christian is going to get like this high level of hype. I don't think he's going to be the superstar now. And it's like Christian, like they could have easily burned. Christian's only 25 too. He's one of the, if you're 25 in the UFC, like non-UFC fans don't understand. Like if you're 25 in the UFC, you're still so young in the game. It's like, and Rodriguez is so young in the game right now. He's not even close to his peak. And if he goes out there and gets submitted in the first round in one of those rear naked choke attempts from Rosas, now you're burning him off. So it's like, I don't think it made sense at all by any means, this fight.
Yeah, I don't. And so I just, it's just so weird to me seeing everyone else like handpicked and like, you know, the perfect matchups and stuff. And then seeing that, like, and then like you were saying earlier too, that's not even a good, like, not only that, like the talent or the level they went up, it's not even a good matchup necessarily for Rosas, because he does have, not that you have to give him straight strikers, but then again, they gave O'Malley and who, like they didn't give her a single wrestler. I was gonna say even like Bo Nickel, they gave him Jamie Pickett and stuff like that.
He's like, getting Trayshawn Gore next.
I see that.
Best skill is just striking.
Yeah, that's what, I don't know. I think it's just weird. It's like, and I mean, I'm not necessarily mad at it, but it's like the only time when there is a Mexican fighter to like rally around, it's because they went through like, you know, hell on earth to get there. Like Moreno finally got there. Yair had such a tough career with the fights he's taken and stuff like that. So, but I think, you know, but then also the only thing I always come back to is he is 18. So it's not like you could really push him that hard, that quick. Because I don't think he's too young. Like personally, I don't think you could be that good when you're that young, like to really knock off a top guy and stuff like that. So, but he'll be back. I'm interested to see his next fight and the changes at least that he makes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And you know, also to your point, Irene Aldana should be fighting Amanda Nunes. Right? There's no reason to run that Juliana Pena trilogy. First of all, I'm tired of trilogies. I'm tired of rematches. And there's been a lot of instances where you need one, right? We've just been in that position where Izzy should have got the rematch. Kamaru Usman should have got the rematch, right? The Moreno and Figueiredo, you could really argue that a couple ways, but it's like there's been a lot of positions where the rematch was needed. We didn't need the Glover Teixeira Yuri Prohaska rematch. That got canceled. So not to say thankfully, but like I'm not kicking myself over missing it. And it's now we're going to see Grasso Shevchenko probably, understandably so. And it's like now we're sitting here with the trilogy between Pena and Nunes. I get they're 1-1, but my God, Pena got beat down badly.
Handedly. Yeah.
And like the competition, like she was getting like made fun of. She got beat so bad. The fight was not close. It's crazy that when you have Irene Aldana coming off a finish, that this is the fight where it's like, all right, Nunes. Like I literally think they're just like, who's gonna headline 289? Because they booked Yair and Volk for 290, and there was nowhere they could go. So they were like, guess it's Nunes Pena. That's what it felt like to me.
I was gonna say also, can I stop seeing her headline, please? I didn't want to watch the last time when they fought the second time when that was the headline. Like, so I didn't really. I mean, the second one I understood that fight had to happen. Didn't need to be a headline though. I wouldn't mind. And then this one, like you were saying, trilogy like that was announced, and I didn't think I was there. No, I won't say that won't be that harsh. Like saying there was a shred of joy, but it's hard to get really excited for that third fight, and then it's hard to get excited when you're seeing that's the main event on a pay-per-view card too. It's
Mhm.
just it's not the ideal matchup, I think, and then not ideal main event.
Yeah, and to that point, you can put them as a co-main and have a really solid card. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's a great co-main. It's a out of the park co-main. They could have done 290, had it be Yair and Volk, and have Nunez and Pena as the co-main. Not a bad card. It's not the best card you'll ever see, right? But that's not a bad card at all. You spread them apart, separate those two. Now that's main event isn't great. And Nunez always gets in these spots where, right? She fought her fight against Felicia Spencer was the main event. No one
Hmm.
thought Felicia Spencer was winning that fight. That fight wasn't good. It's like it's a great example of like, oh, what are we doing here for a main
Yeah.
event? Really?
I just think too, and maybe I don't have enough faith. It's just tough because I that's going to be like the main event, and I don't trust the UFC to build a good enough card like on the bottom, like the actual main card. I think I've already seen if they're main eventing with that, I can easily see them not, trying the hardest with the card too. So that's why it makes it just tough overall.
Yep, I had the same exact thought. So I looked at the card, what they have right now, and keep in mind, I think this is we're about 2 months away from this card. So you once you get in that 8 week range, that eight I don't want to say the 8 week range is a cap for when you can put a fight on a card, but
Uh-huh.
a lot of times once you're inside 8 weeks, you don't see a lot of additions. If you do, probably not a main card level fight or a co-main level fight.
Uh-huh.
Right now, the co-main is going to be Wonder Boy and Michelle Pereira. Not a bad fight. Like
Yeah, I mean
I like it, but a pay-per-view co-main, you can do
it's a
better.
bit much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that card is going to be great as like a full-on pay-per-view. It's nothing like this. It's nothing like any of the pay-per-views we've had recently.
Uh-huh.
Um, and do you want to touch on the Kelvin Gastelum and Chris Curtis fight, or we can call it because we're at an hour? I'll leave it up to you. It doesn't make a difference to me.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think it's too long. I just think. I mean, it's good for Calvin. Glad he got another win. He did look.
Mhm.
They kept saying on the broadcast, just hammering home that he looked quick and that. And I think he did look a little quick compared to Chris Curtis. I don't think Chris Curtis is that great for me. I know some other people like him more than I do. Um, but I mean, he's a slow starter or whatever. And got started. I think he could have won that fight if it had been a couple more rounds. But good win for Kelvin. Also, I did not see. I think from what I remember, it was 229, 29, 28, and a 30, 27. I definitely thought Chris
Crazy.
Curtis won one of those rounds for sure. So that
Mhm.
was a bit odd, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Curtis eventually has to start putting together two fights in a row if he wants to do anything. Yeah, I feel like he's win one, lose one, and he's not fighting necessarily the toughest guys. But good for Kelvin. I mean, I'll tune into his next one too. I'll be a little more excited when I see a Kelvin fight. Hopefully, he can maybe win another one too, depending on who he fights. But
Yeah, I'll keep my end short too. For Calvin Gastelum to go out there and get a win, very how do I word this? It's good for him, basically. Good for him
uh,
because he was, I think, 1-5 in his last six. That's a bad stretch. Only win over Darren Till, who that loss aged very badly. Last guy
uh,
Till beat. And I like Darren Till, but this is the last guy Till beat. And so he needed to win badly, and he went out and got it. I agree. 30-27 is wild. I think Curtis won the third round fairly clearly. And I think Curtis probably would have won the second round if he wouldn't have got hit by that headbutt. He got hit by the
oh,
headbutt,
that's what it was.
and it looked like he was going to get finished in that second round. And I think before that moment, it was just about 50-50. And I think he won after that moment. I think after the headbutt, and once he like got his wits back about him, he then won the rest of that round. But I think the headbutt, like they also never showed a clear view of the headbutt. They just said it
And
was a headbutt. So
uh-huh.
I assume it was. I haven't seen because the broadcast never showed like, hey, this was a headbutt, and I haven't went back and rewatched the fight in slow mo to see it. But I think there was probably a headbutt, and I think Curtis probably wins that round if there's no headbutt. The strikes, they each landed 30 in that round as well. And Chris Curtis gets the headbutt, or excuse me, Gastelum gets the headbutt. And afterwards, he then lands 10 ground and pound shots.
Yeah.
So I think that Curtis might have won that round. I think he got a bad break there. I think he probably wins that round and maybe even that fight if that moment doesn't happen. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Kelvin Gastelum because I didn't think Kelvin Gastelum was going to look that good. I didn't think he would land that much on Chris Curtis, who has good boxing defense. He had a great game plan with the leg kicks too. So good fight from Chris Curtis. But I would have liked to see how that played out without the headbutt.
Yeah, because now that you reminded me, no, I think that's the only reason. Well, to me, like I would be a little more like go heavier on it. I thought that's the only reason why Gaslam won that second round was the headbutt. I remember if it was because to be fair, once again they never showed it, which was interesting. But I remember it happened, and the announcer was like, "Oh, he got caught." And I didn't ever thought. I thought I could tell it looked like he got headbutt because he was in too close, and the way he dropped. And the way he was like on the floor too, I'm surprised Gaslam couldn't get him out of there because he was down bad for a second, not moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think must have finally, got, shook off the cobwebs from the head. But yeah, no, he got I don't know if they counted as a knockdown then, but he got him on the ground and then landed those ground and pound. And that was the biggest moment of the round and the best thing Gaslam did. So you take that out and kind of like you said, I had maybe leaning Curtis. It was 50-50 in the beginning. And then Curtis came back in the end of the round. So not kind of just now I'm saying exactly what you were saying, but no, I agree. I agree that I think, yeah, Curtis maybe even wins that fight for sure. I think if you take out that head, because at that point, it would be 29-28 him, but maybe not with that third judge. Maybe he still loses. But no, I think it was interesting too. Yeah, that was it's also weird. Maybe it wasn't because they never showed it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's that's a good point too because sometimes the broadcast isn't great, right? Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, there was a headbutt," or "Oh, there was a groin strike," and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "I don't see it. You're showing me the replay. I don't see what you're saying." And so maybe they were wrong. But also Chris Curtis has a really good chin, right? Chris Curtis, good chin, good defense.
Yeah.
Gastelum isn't known for his knockout power. So all the things adding up together, it probably was a headbutt. So, and I agree with everything you said too, where if there's no headbutt, I could easily see Chris Curtis winning that fight. So, but ifs and buts, but it is what it is, I guess. And we'll end it. There's no reason to really go any further down the card. Good fights, nothing crazy, nothing super notable or noteworthy. And we're already at an hour 15, basically. So we'll call it. Anthony, always love talking fights with you. And thank you to anyone who tuned in. Daily Show will be back tomorrow. I assume it's Hannafan and Bagdonis. I assume they'll be talking baseball and NBA. But you'll have to tune in to get the full breakdown yourself. Thank you to everyone who tuned in.